Jury unanimously recommending that the defendant be sentenced to death.
You're hot and the pack, you're responsible for the kill. In this case, you can pretty much call me pack leader.
I'm raising a relationship, but somebody else I have absolutely don't know nothing about. And they frame me,
Markeith Loyd. Markeith Loyd was a man who had it all: a loving girlfriend, a promising career, and a bright future. But he also had a dark side, a violent temper, a disregard for the law, and a lust for power. Loyd killed his pregnant ex-girlfriend and her unborn child in 2016, sparking a massive manhunt that lasted for about 9 days. He shot and killed Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton in 2017 as she tried to arrest him outside a Walmart. He was the man who had escaped from custody, fled across the country, and evaded capture for 9 days. Loyd's first victim was Sadie Dixon, his pregnant ex-girlfriend, whom he shot and killed along with her unborn child in December 2016. Loyd was angry at Dixon for breaking up with him and wanted to punish her for leaving him. He also feared that she would expose his criminal past to the police. After killing Dixon, Loyd fled the scene and became the subject of a massive manhunt by the police. He managed to evade capture for more than a month until he encountered Lieutenant Clayton at a Walmart and shot her dead. In January 2017, he encountered Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton outside a Walmart on Princeton Street near Orlando International Airport. They had crossed paths multiple times while in the store. Clayton recognized him as Dixon's boyfriend and tried to arrest him for robbery. Loyd panicked and shot her twice, once in the chest, which killed her instantly, and once in the neck, which severed her jugular vein. He then carjacked a vehicle and fled the scene, leaving Clayton's body on the ground. The police arrested Loyd on January 17, 2017, after a 9-day manhunt that involved hundreds of officers, helicopters, and dogs. They found him hiding in an abandoned house, wearing body armor and armed with 2 guns. Loyd tried to resist his arrest and was injured in the process, losing his left eye. Loyd was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of first-degree murder of an unborn child, and several other charges related to his crimes. He faced 2 separate trials, one for each murder. He represented himself in both trials against the advice of the judge and his standby counsel. He claimed that he acted in self-defense in both cases, and that he was the victim of a conspiracy by the police and the media.
I was just reacting, Mary. I was just reacting. Even when they opened the door, I just reacted. I fired 2 shots, I just reacted.
He also made several rambling statements about race, religion, and conspiracy theories. The trial began in September 2019 and lasted for 3 weeks. During the trial, Loyd testified for 6 hours and cross-examined witnesses, including Dixon's family members and Stewart. He also showed graphic photos of Dixon's body and his injuries to the jury. Loyd was often disruptive and argumentative in the courtroom, prompting the judge to admonish him several times. On October 23, 2019, the jury found Loyd guilty of all charges. Although he faced the death penalty, the jury unanimously voted not to recommend it. The judge sentenced Loyd to life in prison without parole. Loyd showed no remorse and even smiled and laughed during the trial. Loyd's second trial began in October 2021, and he was found guilty of killing Clayton. He was charged with first-degree murder of a police officer, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault, carjacking with a firearm, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon for Lieutenant Clayton's murder. Initially, Loyd wanted to represent himself again but changed his mind and accepted a public defender. During one of his trial hearings, the judge threw Markeith Loyd out of the court after he had a profanity-laced outburst.
So do you still wish to proceed with this complaint against your counsel? I understand. All right, so you are refusing to discuss your initial complaint against counsel at this time, is that correct? Mr. Loyd, watch your tone and the way you speak. Out.
According to the state, Markeith Loyd made choices that led to his crimes. They said Loyd was on probation when he shot and killed his ex-girlfriend Sadie Dixon and her unborn child. They also said Loyd was on the run for those murders when he killed Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. The defense claimed Markeith Loyd was the victim of his childhood and mental illness. He lived in poverty and sold drugs to support his family. The defense claimed Loyd was delusional and suffered from PTSD. The judge scheduled another hearing on February 2022 to listen to an expert witness hired by the defense who would evaluate Loyd's mental competency at the time of each murder. But before the hearing could take place, something unexpected happened. Loyd had another outburst during one of his previous hearings in which he complained about being held in solitary confinement at jail without any visitors or phone calls. Court feed shows Loyd standing surrounded by several uniformed law enforcement officers. The audio doesn't immediately kick in, but when it does, you can hear Loyd saying, "I'm leaving," as he pulls his arm away from an officer before exiting the courtroom. He repeated the phrase several times as he walked down the hallway, off camera. Law enforcement in the courtroom quickly followed after Loyd. This incident showed Loyd's lack of respect for the court and the law. Loyd displayed no remorse for killing Clayton and had frequent outbursts during the trial, calling the prosecutors, the judge, and the witnesses liars. He also left the courtroom on different occasions and needed to be restrained by the deputies. On March 3, 2022, Loyd was formally sentenced to death by Ninth Circuit Judge Letitia Marquez, who followed the jury's recommendation.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant Markeith Loyd should be sentenced to death.
Loyd appeared to be mouthing something out loud to the public. Minutes later, Loyd reacted angrily after his death sentence was pronounced. He was removed from that courtroom by the deputies, while Clayton's family and supporters clapped and cheered. Loyd's family and attorney didn't speak to the media but announced that they would appeal the sentence. Loyd's death sentence was the first one given in Orange County since 2015 and the first one in Florida since 2018. He's currently on death row at the Florida State Prison, waiting for his execution by lethal injection. However, his execution date is unclear, as Florida's death penalty system has been challenged and reformed in recent years.
You hunt as a pack, you're responsible for the killing. In this case, you can pretty much call me pack leader.
Mikel Brady. Mikel Brady was serving a life sentence without parole at a Pasquotank Correctional Institution in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, after killing his former boss in Vermont in 2014. He was a convicted murderer who wanted to escape from prison at any cost. He had a history of violence and escape attempts, and he was determined to. He and 3 other inmates, Seth Frazier, Jonathan Monk, and Wyseza Buckman, carried out a plan that they had been planning for months on October 12, 2017. They smuggled tools, weapons, and supplies into backpacks through their jobs in the prison sewing plant. They were prepared to run and fight and learn the layout and security protocols of the prison. They started a fire in a trash can to distract the guards, and then assaulted the prison workers with scissors, hammers, and screwdrivers. They aimed to reach the perimeter fence, cut through it with the wire cutters, and flee in a getaway car that they had set up with an accomplice outside. However, their plan failed miserably. The fire had set off the sprinkler system, which drew the attention of the guards. The inmates met resistance from the prison workers, who defended themselves courageously.
That man, Mikel Brady, beat that man, George Midget, like he was trying to bust concrete.
The inmates brutally murdered 4 of them: Veronica Darden, the sewing plant manager; Justin Smith, a correctional officer; Wendy Shannon, another correctional officer; and Jeffrey Howe, a maintenance mechanic. They also wounded 10 other workers and 4 other inmates.
It was like a bloodbath, and I stepped in between Jeffrey and Wendy, and I slid trying to get in because the whole elevator floor was nothing but blood.
The inmates never made it to the fence. They were arrested by the responding officers, who used tear gas and pepper spray to subdue them. They were transported to a maximum security prison, facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and 10 other felonies. The trial of Mikel Brady was the first to happen in October 2019 in the Dare County Courthouse in Montejo, North Carolina. The trial was transferred to Pasquotank County due to the high-profile nature of the case and the possible prejudice of the jury pool. The trial took 3 weeks and included more than 50 witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence. Brady, who was already serving a life sentence for shooting a state trooper in Vermont in 2014, showed no remorse for his actions and confessed that he had to do whatever it took to escape. He also argued that he was acting in self-defense and that the prison staff had abused him and other inmates. He said he had no regrets and would do it again if he had the chance. When Brady had the chance to speak, he delivered hours and hours of testimony.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth. Whether it hurts me, whether it helps me, I don't care about that.
You don't believe you're crazy, do you?
No, I don't think I'm crazy, no.
And you do know the difference between right and wrong?
Yes.
So you know murder is wrong?
Murder is a different name for a death, but yes.
Your freedom meant more than their lives?
Yes.
He confessed that he thought the plan to escape was possible and began planning as soon as he became convicted of murder after shooting a North Carolina state trooper 5 times.
I always wanted to escape from the moment they convicted me to 40 years. I stabbed him like 4 to 8 times. I hit Jeffrey Howe until he stopped moving. I don't know how many times I hit him with a hammer.
He said he didn't want to hurt Veronica Darden, one of the prison workers killed in the attack. Brady also rejected the help of his defense attorneys, who tried to save him from the death penalty by claiming that he had mental health issues and a troubled childhood. Brady, however, demanded that he wanted to die and that he was mentally stable. The 7 men and 5 women jury took only 35 minutes before finding Brady guilty of all charges. Then they proceeded to the sentencing phase, in which they had to choose whether to give Brady life imprisonment or death. The prosecution asked the jury to apply the death penalty, saying that Brady's crimes were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that he threatened society. They also showed statements from the families of the victims, who shared their grief, anger, and pain, and demanded justice. The defense urged the jury to let Brady live, saying he was a human being who had value and dignity, and that he could still make a difference in society. The jury spent less than an hour before suggesting the death penalty for Brady.
The jury unanimously recommending that the defendant be sentenced to death.
Brady's reaction to his sentence was unusual. He sat there without any emotion. The judge, Senior Resident Superior Court Judge Jerry Tillett, agreed with the jury's recommendation and found Brady guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced Brady to death. He said, "May God have mercy on your soul." Martez Abram. Martez Abram, a former Walmart employee, received the death penalty on December 2, 2022, for murdering 2 of his co-workers and wounding a police officer in a shooting spree at a South Haven, Mississippi store in 2019. His trial and sentencing witnessed emotional outbursts and defiant behavior, stunning the courtroom and the public. Abram was a disgruntled employee who had worked at the Walmart location for 25 years before he got suspended on July 27, 2019, for showing a knife to another employee. He got fired the next day, and on July 30th, he came back to that store armed with 2 guns and a bulletproof vest. He killed Brandon Gales and Anthony Brown, both managers at that store. A Walmart employee encountered Abram in the parking lot on her way into the store. The woman said that Abram pointed a gun at her and said, "You're next." The woman added that she managed to run and hide until police reached the scene. He also fired at the police, injuring Officer Brandon Billingsley in the back before being shot twice by another officer and arrested. Abram expressed no remorse during his trial and argued that he only defended himself. On Thursday, Martez Abram testified in his defense, which didn't help his case. As he saw himself on video, Martez Abram cried as he admitted to shooting 2 people.
That's you, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Look at it, please, sir.
Yes.
All right, proceed. Stop. Mr. Gale is on the floor going down at this point, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and that's you shooting him, right?
Yes.
Okay, proceed. Stop it. Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
They also displayed at least 4 gun magazines, ammo, a rifle, a knife, and body armor they said Abram brought with him. Abram said he had those guns because he feared for his safety, citing problems at work and a car break-in. "I never had a gun before, but it got to a point where I was scared that I was going to get hurt," said Abram. He told the court he was suspended from work, awaiting an investigation just days before the shooting. He said on the day of the shooting, his memory went blank. He claimed he only remembered running into the store and then running out. Prosecutors claimed Abram committed capital murder, a crime that carries the death penalty. They said he not only killed Brown and Gales, but also committed arson to cover up evidence and tried to escape from the crime. In court, prosecutors showed a list Abram created with necessary items such as gasoline, a container, and a rental car. On December 2nd, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury convicted Abram of 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted murder.
Find the defendant, Martez Abram, guilty of capital murder in count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martez Abram, guilty of capital murder in count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martez Abram, guilty of attempted murder in count 3.
The same jury then agreed to sentence him to death, denying his plea for life in prison without parole. Abram showed little emotion as the jury declared their verdict and sentence. He didn't look at the victims' families or the judge. He only nodded slightly when the judge asked him if he understood his right to appeal. And that's it for today's video. If you do want to see more crazy courtroom moments, please check out this video and don't forget to subscribe.